Live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello, good morning. You're listening to Teachers Talk Radio, and it is the Sunday breakfast with Phin. Of course it is, right here live. I hope you are as good as can be.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
I certainly hope you're cooler. It has been a hot one, hasn't it? Did your school shut? Did it close early? Did you take the early finish? We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the link between discomfort and danger in the classroom. Also, the pressures of today. So that's all here live, right on Teachers Talk Radio.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
I say it's a lot cooler. I've still got my hot coffee, and it's still not as cool as could be, but not school closure type cool. Of course, if you're not listening to this show from a British school, or have experience of working in a British school, and you're out in Dubai, I used to 35, but I still maintain that the British heat, when it gets to about 35 degrees, which it did on a couple of occasions, I had my own thermometer. It is hard to cope with because it's this sort of muggy heat that we get, mixed with the humidity, I think. So I really struggled this week. But did your school shut a little bit early? Let me know in the comments. It'd be lovely to hear from you on today's show. Speaking of which, what are we talking about? Well, talking about the link between discomfort and danger, actually. That's the first little bit I'll talk with you about. Then we'll have the news, and then I'll probably do a wider conversation around the pressures of today, and is life itself, is teaching more stressful than ever? So we're talking stress. This is the official, I say the official, it's not official. This is the mental health hour here on Teachers Talk Radio. We talk teacher mental health. That's all we do. That's all I talk about. I ramble a bit and you join in. Simple as that. Are we ready? Are we happy? Let's go then. So, of course, you join me live having watched the England match. That's the first thing. And that is a real boost, isn't it, to well-being? And you might find that in tomorrow when you're back at school. You might find that actually things just feel brighter, lighter, cooler, better when England win a game. Football does unite a lot of things. So actually, when we look at the papers, why don't we talk about that then? So, house stress, the link between discomfort and danger. Now, as I sort of alluded to on last week's show, some stress in life and some stress in teaching is going to be inevitable. When it's below a certain level, then we can actually cope. Of course we can. But it might help to know when too much stress is too much, right? And when to reach out. Because I've got to say, there have been times in my life where I've let the stress really get to me. And I probably haven't reached out as quickly as I could have done. I'm getting better at that. And there are still some things I can't control. But I would say I wanted to talk about that because we're now in the summer term, aren't we? And things are a bit lighter. I mean, there's some game time. You've got tasks to do, I'm sure, etc., etc. But there is sometimes a time in these last 3 weeks, at least I find this anyway, to process the year, make sense of it, and maybe move on from the difficult parts, learn from the difficult parts, and move on. So, attending to what's happened, thinking about it, and then easing off, or maybe trying to change it. I'm going to actually, in the next 3 weeks, have quite a difficult meeting. I imagine that's my plan. But I think, the majority of stress is actually what psychiatrists call subclinical. So it's enough to affect your quality of life, but not enough to provoke something diagnosable. But actually, the greater and more prolonged the stress, the more vulnerable your physical and mental well-being can be, right? That's a given. So really, what I wanted to talk about is when we're under prolonged stress, let's face it, in the autumn term or whenever you get really stressed as a teacher, does knowing what level of stress you're dealing with help you in trying to manage it? That's the first thing I wanted to talk about today. So does knowing what level of stress you're dealing with help you manage it? And I suppose as well, it would help to talk a little bit about acute stress, episodic stress, and chronic stress, because there are many different types of stress. So acute stress, short-term crisis type thing. And it may be something that's exciting in small doses and does really little harm unless it's severe or traumatic, right? But the negative effects can include emotional distress, physical symptoms, rapid heartbeat, but they're usually manageable. So that's your acute stress when you've got to do an assembly, or I've got to do a piece of CPD, and it's been rearranged a few times, but it's happening in a couple of weeks to the whole school. So I think that would be an example of acute stress. And then you've got episodic acute stress. So that's what happens when acute stress is regular. So every single day. And that can happen in teaching, can't it? Where you turn up for work and every day is a bit of a challenge. And it happens more in some schools than other schools. No school is perfect. I think most teachers will acknowledge that. Every school has its strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes the very strength is the greatest weakness. There's a bit of COD philosophy. Have you got your fish and chips? Episodic acute stress then. So that's what happens when it's a regular, frequent occurrence, habitual. And I suppose how you combat that is you practice assertiveness. I'm getting better at that. You practice mindfulness. You practice prioritization of certain things over and above other things. And that can actually help reduce its impact. And then the third type is chronic stress, right? So chronic stress, that longer term. What's the definition of chronic? Well, I looked it up. Chronic is 6 months or more lasting of something. That's what chronic is. So it can be long term, it can be lifetime. It can also be 6 months or more. So I'm just pausing and thinking. Can you relate to that? So chronic stress, a high level of stress over an extended period of time. That's the official definition. So it could be, I don't know, your line manager at school consistently criticizing you, or it could be a difficult class that you see every day. It just wears you down and leaves you feeling exhausted, and actually also increases your vulnerability to physical and mental illness. And that can mean that you need support. So we're going to talk identifying all of that. Quality of life, thinking clearly, wearing you down, those type questions is what we'll talk about on today's show. So why don't we start with quality of life? Because if you feel you're more stressed than you should be, it is important to pay attention to that feeling and not just ignore it. Taking it seriously, and maybe consider these 5 questions. So this is suggested to me by, when I did the research for this show, what's the author that came up with these 5? Again, this is not the sort of be all and end all. Camilla Hallinan. Ask yourself, am I finding it hard to relax in my free time? Are my stress levels affecting my general mood? Is my concentration suffering? Am I developing some unhealthy habits? And do I feel like my emotions are hard to manage? So asking yourself those 5 things can be really helpful just to make yourself aware of what your stress is. And she says that if the answer is yes to some or all of the above, so am I finding it hard to relax in my free time? Are my stress levels affecting my general mood? Is my concentration suffering? Am I developing unhealthy habits? Do I feel like my emotions are hard to manage? If the answer is yes to any of those, stress is definitely affecting your well-being. So we'll talk about that today. But that maybe roots things to the spot. Just gone 9:10. We'll hear from the news from Joe Fox very shortly. But before we do, I suppose the bigger question is, how serious actually is it? Because stress is an inevitable part of life, right? So how serious is the stress you're trying to manage? Because one sign that chronic stress is getting to you, possibly to the point where maybe you do need to consider looking after your mental health in possibly a more routine way, is cognitive impairment. That's what's been identified by the same author, actually, that came up with these 5 questions. So if stress makes regular thinking tasks difficult, this can make your problem solving and multitasking difficult as well. It can interfere with judgment and things. Now, experiencing acute stress now and then isn't going to harm you unless it's really extreme. But if it becomes regular or chronic, then you probably want to pay attention to it. Use a bit of stress management techniques, maybe get in touch with a therapist, I guess. These are just thoughts. These aren't recommendations, and this by no means is therapy. So good self-care is key, whatever your situation, and keeping your stress levels down to a tolerable level is also crucial. So I think we can conclude on that. We'll talk more after the news right here on Teachers Talk Radio. When we come back, we'll talk about managing stress. Right now, though, here's the news with Joe Fox.
As teachers, we know the barriers girls face go far beyond the classroom. That's why the FA and Barclays Made for This Game Breaking Barriers campaign is taking on 2 of the biggest barriers girls face today: misogyny and body confidence. Right now, 56% of teachers say they don't feel confident discussing these topics with their students, and that's exactly where this campaign can help. With free, easy-to-use resources and a podcast designed for busy teachers, Breaking Barriers gives you practical support to help start the conversations, creating more positive environments for girls in school, in sport, and beyond. It's time to empower girls to believe they belong. Go to girlsfootballinschools.org and click on Made for This Game.
In education, we all want recruitment to be fair and inclusive, because the gender pay gap won't disappear without clear, practical steps in how we hire. Recent national research shows schools are already taking meaningful action. 40% of leaders now include pay or progression details in adverts. 35% highlight well-being support, and around 1 in 5 are using anonymised shortlisting to reduce bias. Teaching vacancies, the Department for Education's free official job listing service, makes these steps easier, with clear salary fields, flexible working filters, and an application format that supports blind recruitment. It also removes previous salary questions, so candidates are assessed on their skills and experience rather than their past pay. For your next hire or your next role, go online and search Teaching Vacancies Gov UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Schools Week reports on delays to SATs marking, with maths markers drafted in to assist with grammar, punctuation and spelling tests. Contractor Pearson sought the support after what Schools Week reports as weeks of technical glitches on the new ModMark marking platform. Pearson took over the £180 million SATs contract from Capita this year. The marking deadline had already been extended, but the article says that tens of thousands of questions remained unmarked. The same publication also reports that a considerable reduction to the amount schools contribute to teachers' pensions is highly likely following a revaluation of the scheme by ministers. According to the article, teachers' contributions and pension pots are not expected to change. Schools currently pay a fee equivalent to 28.6% of teachers' wages every year into the teachers' pension scheme. Skills Minister Jackie Smith said the rate is expected to drop and any change would come into effect next April and would remain in place for 4 years. News of the anticipated savings schools will make comes as the sector waits for the government's decision on teacher pay for September. The BBC covers the story of a private tutor who charged money to sit dozens of exams for students and submit coursework for them. The man has been jailed for 3 years after the scam earned him £300,000. He sat the assignments and tests for more than 120 students at Liverpool John Moores University, but was caught after a student handed in a USB drive containing suspicious coursework to a professor in the university's School of Computer Science and Mathematics. Finally, the BBC Scotland News website covers the story of a private school in Moray, which will close due to financial pressures. The school in Forres was co-founded by Oscar-winning actress Tilda Swinton and focused on more alternative, practical learning rather than pupils sitting tests. Trustees have announced that its kindergarten would finish at the end of June, following the closure of its upper and lower school provision earlier this year. A spokesperson for the trustees said that the VAT on school fees policy brought in by government had been hard to bear and that they had not been able to establish the financial foundations necessary to continue. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jo. So, can't have a radio show without the weather. A lot cooler today, isn't it, in most parts of England? Goodness me, how do we manage that heat wave? And how are we looking the next week? Well, I think most of the schools are going to be staying open. Mine certainly is. Today's going to be cooler, breezy. Thank goodness, really. Some areas of cloud will sweep through in the morning, bringing the odd spot of rain. But it will then turn dry with sunshine for the afternoon. Tonight, we're looking at sunshine in the evening, dry, clear skies for most, and just the odd patch of cloud. Noticeably cooler night. We'll take that. We shall take that. Please. Definitely need to. On Monday, it's going to continue to be pretty dry, and there'll be sunshine in the morning. Some areas of cloud will drift in for the afternoon, but sunny spells will remain in between. Some thicker cloud will build in the evening. The outlook for Tuesday to the end of the week, it's going to stay less hot than recent days. However, it will still be generally warm, especially on Thursday as temperatures lift a little. Tuesday should be a dry with sunny spells to start, but the afternoon could see the odd shower. It will mainly be dry on Wednesday with sunny spells, patchy cloud, and just the outside chance of a shower. Early cloud clears to warm sunshine on Thursday. Sometimes you can have too much of a good thing, and I think the sunshine is one of them. That's my view anyway. Right, should we take a look at today's papers? As a course, this is the feature that we live and die for. Devolution, revolution, and the cost of cool. Lots of things. So there's a mix of stories actually on the Sunday's papers, and all of them were published obviously before the England win, which is always the fascinating thing of news. And that, I guess, is where the news landscape is changing so much. We're going away from papers, but there is something about a paper copy of something that really helps. I regularly refer to these. So, real mix of stories. Sunday Mirror previews Andy Burnham's economic speech on Monday, where he'll pledge to give mayors more power. Of course he will, because he was a Manchester mayor, where he pledges, or will pledge rather, to give mayors more power and invest extra cash into regions. The paper cites a source who says, should Burnham become Prime Minister, devolution will be at the heart. Well, we're already treating it as if he is the Prime Minister. He's not even been elected yet. But there it is. So that's their headline. The Sunday Telegraph, tax capital gains more, Burnham ally urges. So this is Andy Burnham's top ally urging him to increase capital gains tax and loosen fiscal rules to allow the government to borrow millions. Louise Hay, who would be in line for a senior role in the Burnham cabinet, should he become PM, says there needs to be a fundamental redesign of the tax system to deliver economic renewal. Elsewhere, they've got a picture of Prince George next to his mother, the Princess of Wales, as the pair visited a military base on Saturday. Yes, the royals. Will they do? There's obviously the personal tax that's been declared, but Prince George, will he do time in the military? That's a question, because obviously William did and Harry did as well. Will he? Sunday Times, destroyers out, drones in under new defence plan. So the outgoing PM, Sir Keir Starmer, has scrapped plans to replace the Royal Navy's ageing fleet in favour of funding drones in his defence investment plan. That's according to the Sunday Times. It also adds that Andy Burnham, who's expected to succeed Sir Keir, I'm going to stop saying that because a lot of things we're just assuming he is, has signed off on the proposal to shift away from modernising the armed forces and instead prioritising autonomous vehicles. Now, the way the news is being reported it is as if Andy Burnham is now the Prime Minister. Really, every paper I read, yes, they're praising it with if he happens to be, but everything else, it's assumed that he is. The Mail, this is their headline, Class Warrior. Bridget's family made 900% profit on council home. So this is the Educational Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, front page of the Mail, over a class row involving Labour's housing policies and the rights of council tenants to buy their homes. Alongside, the paper also has the Duke of Sussex reconsidering bringing his wife and children when he visits the UK next month due to security concerns. The Observer, now this is an interesting one, the cost of cool. So they've shifted the focus, but stayed on temperature, actually. And they've got a picture of, this must be a real picture. This can't be AI generated, can it? It's a picture of a paddling pool in the streets. Simple as that. And it's quite a sort of cluttered street. And it's talking about the inequality of heat. Interesting. There's something to debate in your classroom, if you fancy. Record heat wave must be wake-up call for Britain. That's the Independent. Experts warn that the heat wave, which gripped the UK this week, closed a lot of schools, is not a one-off and should act as a wake-up call. Well, there's a problem. I'm going to also share an opinion on that. How can you establish air conditioning in schools without rebuilding them? Because the costs are so astronomical. What we need really is someone to invent a series of air conditioning units that can be fitted at a limited cost. Because that's the thing, you know, new builds, yes, you can ask that in new builds, but once the building is there, to establish an efficient, and I'm not just talking fans, because fans are one thing, but an efficient air conditioning unit, it's harder to do. The Sun on Sunday, Minister in texts pest rap. What on earth is that? This is the Sun reporting on Cabinet Minister Nick Thomas Symonds allegedly sending inappropriate messages to a female MP. Cabinet Office spokesman said the propriety and ethics team looked into an exchange of messages with a single individual. No evidence of improper conduct was found and no further action was taken. So that's a bit of a non-story, I think, that one. But that's the lead in with the Sun on Sunday. Sunday Express, business too good to stop. Okay. So they have actually, I think they are the only paper, no, there's a couple of others, that obviously printed after the win, which would have been at midnight. So, yeah, that is interesting because they've made it prominent. England's victory over Panama, the Kings of New York. Or do you think they took a risk? What was the famous paper that took a risk in terms of publishing an election win? And it turned out that that person didn't win. It was in America, wasn't it? Daily Star, Yanks a lot. That's their headline. Says English football fans want US-style cheerleaders and halftime shows for the game after being charmed by the American razzle-dazzle at the World Cup. There it is. Those are your headlines here on Teachers Talk Radio. Let's hear from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to be talking more about stress and everything in between. Stay with me right here on TT Radio.
As teachers, we know the barriers girls face go far beyond the classroom. That's why the FA and Barclays Made for This Game Breaking Barriers campaign is taking on two of the biggest barriers girls face today: misogyny and body confidence. Right now, 56% of teachers say they don't feel confident discussing these topics with their students, and that's exactly where this campaign can help. With free, easy-to-use resources and a podcast designed for busy teachers, Breaking Barriers gives you practical support to help start the conversations, creating more positive environments for girls in school, in sport, and beyond. It's time to empower girls to believe they belong. Go to girlsfootballinschools.org and click on Made for This Game.
In education, we all want recruitment to be fair and inclusive because the gender pay gap won't disappear without clear, practical steps in how we hire. Recent national research shows schools are already taking meaningful action. 40% of leaders now include pay or progression details in adverts. 35% highlight well-being support, and around 1 in 5 are using anonymised shortlisting to reduce bias. Teaching vacancies, the Department for Education's free official job listing service, makes these steps easier with clear salary fields, flexible working filters, and an application format that supports blind recruitment. It also removes previous salary questions so candidates are assessed on their skills and experience rather than their past pay. For your next hire or your next role, go online and search Teaching Vacancies Gov UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
We're back. How are you?
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
It's the Sunday Breakfast with Phin. Hope you're okay on this Sunday morning, coming up to 9:30. It's cooler, it's better, but how's your stress? We're talking it out right here. If you do want to get in touch, just send me a message under the comments box. I'll pick it up. Or, of course, you can listen again to this show wherever you like on the Podbean app. Of course it is. So next up, is it wearing you down? Are you thinking clearly? Let's talk.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
And talking it out, we will be doing right here this Sunday morning. I do hope you're okay. So, thinking clearly. 2015 British study identified a series of tests that can suggest if there's a problem. So if you're worried, test your performance on these. Reasoning. Can you solve verbal and numeric reasoning problems at your usual rate? Now, I actually found there's a period of time this year where I actually couldn't add up. I was adding up student test papers and I couldn't add up that quickly. So I thought, there is the cognitive impairment. That told me something. Reaction time. Are your reactions slowing down? Numeric memory. Can you remember a phone number for long enough to dial the number? Visuospatial abilities, that's taking 6 pairs of cards, randomly arranged face down, and turning over 2 at a time. How many can you actually remember? And prospective memory. So if you're given an instruction and then you have a delay before you can act on it, can you remember what you were supposed to do? So everyone has different abilities in these. And I'm also thinking like the cards one, put that right in the bin. I've always hated those type of card games. I can't do them. They hurt my mind. But everyone has different abilities in these areas. So making mistakes isn't a concern. But if you notice your skills decline, and I definitely did, compared to your usual level or more than you'd expect, it may be a sign that you just need to pay a bit more attention to your stress levels. So that's thinking clearly. And also the bigger question, biopsychologically, the stress hormone cortisol is essential. It's what we're built for survival, right? But in moderation, because if we are chronically stressed, a consistently elevated level of cortisol can lead to a suppressed immune system, making you more likely to develop infections, increased appetite and excess glucose production, which may actually lead to weight gain, high blood sugar, and other health problems, and actually high blood pressure as well. So that can lead to heart disease and stroke. So chronically high levels of stress, we're talking, can lead to damage to brain cells in areas that are critical for memory and concentration. So keeping your stress down can be crucial for body and mind. Interesting stuff. And I think it doesn't help that the pressures of today are as they are, because I suppose the second question as we approach the second half of this show is life more stressful than it ever has been? Is teaching more stressful than it ever has been? Now, I'm quite a big proponent of AI. I think it will transform a lot. But has it made our life more stressful? That's what I want to talk about right here. Oh, I definitely don't want to play that. You can tell it's live. There it is. I want to talk about that for the second part of today's show. Because modern life, AI, the modern classroom, it's a mixed blessing, I'd say. We're more technologically advanced than ever before. In fact, Tony Blair, I don't think if you've seen the interview, said that it is the equivalent of an industrial revolution, what we're going through now in terms of the AI revolution. But the pace of life can actually be really quite hard to manage comfortably. So let's think about that, shall we, on this bit of the show. Modern world pressure, work, productivity, communication, always on. I've taken off my school emails actually, but that always on climate that we live in is a difficult one. And what effect do you think contemporary culture actually has on our stress levels? Catherine Nordell from the American Psychological Association says this: many people still feel very squeezed just in terms of taking care of their daily needs. Isn't that interesting? Now, if that sounds familiar, well, I suppose the bigger question is, can modern life 2026 give us what we need? A really influential model of how we measure quality of life was actually given by a South African sociologist, Ruut Veenhoven, in the year 2000. And this was published in the Journal of Happiness Studies. Now, according to Veenhoven, we need 4 things in order to feel we can comfortably cope with life's stresses. 1 is a livable environment. So unpolluted ecosystem, political freedom, functioning economy, cultural opportunities. Have we got that in this country? Another one is personal life ability. So good physical and mental health, skills, knowledge, and understanding. Another one is a useful life. So this is a chance to live according to moral qualities such as compassion. And then appreciation of life, positive emotions, and outlook. So I suppose of all of those, which one is actually not in our control? Well, the environment isn't. Unless we're a political campaigner, or Andy Burnham himself, our environment isn't fully under our control. But actually, life skills, activities, outlook, maybe it's more under our control, would you say? What are your thoughts on that? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments box if you're listening live. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I'm just thinking, well, what can we actually do about all of this? I suppose the key is, like most things, moderation with our communication technology. It can be useful, but too much can feel like round-the-clock pressure. So reducing that, right? Seeking out opportunities to live meaningfully rather than just pleasurably. I've done that. I've recently signed up to a sort of personal and professional development course in West Wales. And that is an example of seeking out opportunities. So once a month, I'll have a bit of training. In fact, that might affect this show. I will probably, I'll probably still be able to do the show live. We'll see. We're talking next year. I'll be with you, by the way, right up until mid-July. And then I'll go on my summer break. But there's a full back catalogue of shows for you to listen to, both from me and others on TT Radio. Just head to ttradio.org to check that out. Taking time out can be useful as well, right? So time to enjoy simple pleasure in life that don't essentially continue that strain. Some work on gratitude. So I often find when I pause and just think, what am I grateful for? What 3 things? That can sometimes help. And being aware of feelings, suggesting you're overwhelmed. Because actually attending to the feelings is probably the crucial element that will decompat burnout. So life today has loads of opportunities, right? And I think we can acknowledge it can be hard to still feel calm in this world. But hopefully that helps. A 2017 American Psychological Association survey, this was their annual stress survey, actually listed the most commonly reported stressors to be the following. Now, can you relate to this as a teacher? Financial worries, 61% reported to be a major pressure. 58% work stress. Now, I wonder what that would be if it was just done on teachers. 50% the economy. So, 50% just where the economy's going. And 80%, so that's 8 in 10 people reported at least one physical or emotional symptom of stress. And both can have consequences for our health. So you're actually in the majority if you find modern life stressful. Isn't that interesting? I suppose it's about balancing it out. Tackling techno stress is probably that. There's a tongue twister for you on a Sunday morning, coming up to 20 to 10. I guess that's what this part of the show is going to talk about. You know, how has AI actually helped teaching and teachers in the classroom? And has it caused more trouble than it's worth? Let's hear from our sponsors first. And when we come back, we'll talk more about that right here on TT Radio. As I say, if you do want to get in touch, feel free. Just type in the comments box.
As teachers, we know the barriers girls face go far beyond the classroom. That's why the FA and Barclays Made for This Game Breaking Barriers campaign is taking on 2 of the biggest barriers girls face today, misogyny and body confidence. Right now, 56% of teachers say they don't feel confident discussing these topics with their students, and that's exactly where this campaign can help. With free, easy-to-use resources and a podcast designed for busy teachers, Breaking Barriers gives you practical support to help start the conversations, creating more positive environments for girls in school, in sport, and beyond. It's time to empower girls to believe they belong. Go to girlsfootballinschools.org and click on Made for This Game.
In education, we all want recruitment to be fair and inclusive because the gender pay gap won't disappear without clear, practical steps in how we hire. Recent national research shows schools are already taking meaningful action. 40% of leaders now include pay or progression details in adverts. 35% highlight well-being support, and around 1 in 5 are using anonymised shortlisting to reduce bias. Teaching vacancies, the Department for Education's free official job listing service makes these steps easier, with clear salary fields, flexible working filters, and an application format that supports blind recruitment. It also removes previous salary questions so candidates are assessed on their skills and experience rather than their past pay. For your next hire or your next role, Go online and search Teaching Vacancies Gov UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
You're listening to the Sunday Breakfast with Phin, and we're talking stress and tackling techno stress as the final bit of today's show. Coping in the digital age. Because that's the thing, we're all citizens of the internet age, aren't we? We're living in an unprecedented level of AI and interconnectedness. I think we can observe that. We don't just need to listen to Tony Blair to get that judgment for that. So 24/7 communication style is where it could go, right? And that can create issues. So what are your boundaries? How does it work? Because whether you're a technophobe or a gadget lover, right, communications technology is a massive feature of contemporary life. We can't get around that. Richard Balding, British occupational psychologist, talks about IT stress in the following way. It's just being constantly connected to everything. You are just unable to switch off. And I think that's true. Where you're constantly connected to something, it can make life quite difficult to switch off. So one thing to do is maybe reduce your multitasking, right? So multitasking, huge stressor. 2009 study, this is where all the big dogs come in. I've actually done research for this bit of the show. 2009 study at Stanford University found that people who simultaneously used many forms of social media while trying to accomplish other tasks had reduced scores on memory and concentration tests and were less able to filter out irrelevant information. So it's mindful social media use. Because also social media is really distracting. 2010 American study installed spyware on student computers. I'm not sure how ethical that is. On student computers. And even though the students were supposed to be working and knew they were being recorded, they knew, I was going to say, yeah, so they had compliance and they got consent. They had non-work related software, such as social media, on their computers for an average of 42. Wow, that's huge. 42% of the time. So these distractions are interfering with our performance and well-being, right? So I suppose my question is it possible to take a break from that? I actually find when I'm in the classroom teaching 4 or 5 periods a day, I have some of my happier times because I'm not that near the technology. I'm in the room. Yes, I've got my email on. Yes, I'm sort of waxing and waning in my attention to the class, but also keeping an eye on emails in case there's safeguarding or whatever. But it is a pretty in-the-moment experience. And that, I think, is part of the joy of being a teacher. And that's part of the reason why I actually want to retain the amount of time I spend in the classroom. Because where teaching can go, if you're in it for long enough, and I've been in it now for a decade, where it can go is you can end up getting promoted, but getting promoted outside of the classroom. That's the thing. Being a head teacher, you're not actually teaching that many lessons per week. You're doing the day-to-day management of the school, whatever that looks like. And for some, that might be their dream job. But for others, and I think I'm in that category, I can imagine it takes you away from the classroom and removes the joy for why you chose the job in the first place. It boils back down to that post-it note that second-year Teach First person gave me on my second day or third day in teacher training. And it just said, always remember why you chose this. And it's so simple, but it's so true. Because that's the thing. Moving yourself away from the classroom means you lose that in-the-moment presence with students. You lose, I think, that connection. And you're then reliant on the technology to drive improvement and strategy. And sure, there's the potential you might have a bigger impact, but you're also removed from it all and you're just connected to, are you just working for, oh yeah, I mean, that's a topic for another day, I guess, in terms of teaching versus leadership. And I guess that's why a couple of years ago they introduced, or at least the government did, in some schools, the possibility of lead practitioner pay. So lead practitioner pay being pay in the job that you're at, but you stay in the classroom. That might be worth exploring. So it's just gone 10:15 on a Sunday. We're going to be talking a little bit about that in the final bit of today's show.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
It's the Sunday Breakfast with Phin.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
So, is it possible then to, even if we're in more of an admin heavy side of teaching, to reduce our reliance on technology and reduce stressful multitasking, juggling all this media, if it's become an unhealthy habit? Because in the short term, American psychologist and technology expert Larry Rosen advises tech breaks. So that's literally where you turn off devices while working and allow yourself just to breathe. There's a mindful strategy suggested by a Buddhist where you breathe in and you say the word just, and you breathe out and you say the word breathe. And that's a sort of brain break. Very simple. I quite like it. What are your thoughts on that? Turning off your devices, allowing your time-limited tech breaks through the day. And then, yes, you limit your distraction, allowing you to work efficiently. I suppose the other question is, what's your school policy on phones? Obviously, phones for students is one thing, but phones for staff. So I've worked in different schools, some that are fine with them, others that are not. Are you glued to your smartphone? So a 2014 American study found that people who use their smartphone late at night experience a more disturbed sleep and find more stressful the next day. Yes, I think this is actually a little bit outdated, because I think the screen's bright light, they used to say about the bright light of the phone, make it difficult to suppress melatonin. I believe that finding has been more challenged than it was in 2014. I'm pretty sure that one, the evidence is more equivocal than originally it was thought. So it used to be just the blue light of your phone was thought to be the thing that keeps you awake. But I think they have challenged that. But the latter one about the dopamine, so the invasive, always on nature of the phone, I think that finding is still the consensus of where things are. 2014 Dutch study found that people who were high frequency users of smartphones found it more difficult to detach from their jobs. And that actually led to emotional exhaustion. Of course it did. So, you know, let's make this show useful. Final bit of today's show, digital clutter. So tech experts offer these tips. Make your computer desktop simple and easy on the eye. Unsubscribe from unwanted mailing lists. Delete accounts you rarely use. Organize your bookmarks to be easy to navigate. Set up a logical filing system for your documents and delete files you don't need. Pick an internet homepage that just makes you that just takes you to a search engine and won't bombard you with news or celebrity gossip. And don't follow too many online friends, limiting your social media friendships to people you genuinely care about. Yes. These are interesting stats I'm just looking at now. According to a 2013 American study, as little as 2 hours exposure to light from phones and tablets is enough to suppress the sleep hormone melatonin. Now, I do think that has been challenged. New York Times in 2010 found the average computer user checks 40 websites a day and switches between 37 programs an hour, which means we actually change tasks every 2 minutes. How healthy is that? Final stat for you. According to the American Psychological Association, the 2017 stress survey I was on about before, 86% of people say they check their emails, texts, and social media constantly or often. People who check constantly reported their stress levels at 5.3 out of 10. Wow. Those who check less often, 4.4. Now that is interesting. I think I'm in that category, the 5.5 stress level. I often do a rating in terms of if someone asks how I am, I just say a number. It's a little bit strange, but I just say a number. I'm a 6. Because it does, I mean, there is something quantitative in that. Anyway, your thoughts on that, I'd be really appreciative of any comments you have as we begin to finish today's show. Pretty much it from me on your Sunday morning. I hope that you are looking forward to a slightly cooler day and a cooler classroom. Let's hope so anyway. Goodness me, let's definitely hope so. You can listen again to the full back catalogue of all our shows on TT Radio. Just go to ttradio.org and click listen again, and you'll be able to see them all there. They're also on Podbean, dedicated Podbean channel where this show sits, but also there's loads of other shows. This week, for example, Yannick is talking about the summer of discontent, game time, proms, heat waves, and other arguments. So that's on Wednesday. Do tune into that show, 6 p.m. What else have we got? Darren Lester is back, looking at a German paper on bullying and violence in schools. So this is next Saturday at 9 a.m. Violence and Bullying in Schools, a German View. That's with Darren Lester. We've also got a show from Paula Delaney, Pedagogy Before Technology. That fits quite nicely to what I've just been talking about, doesn't it? So Pedagogy Before Technology, exploring technology, learning, and decision-making in schools. And that's with a guest, Charlotte Bleakley. We've also got a full back catalogue of shows, as I was saying. If you fancy listening to The Late Show that happened on Friday, you can listen again. September starts now. The Legacy of Term 6. Ugh, not sure I like that. The topic, not the presenter, of course. So you can check out the full back catalogue of shows should you so wish. I will be back on next week's show where I think we'll talk a little bit more about tackling techno stress, because I think there's more to be said, isn't there, on techno stress? I definitely think there's more to be said. But also, why don't we touch on the stress of multitasking? So teaching itself is a multitasking profession. I think it would be quite a good chat that we could have around that, if you wish. So that will be next Sunday at exactly the same time. Because multitasking, it comes with the territory. But this is the thing. When you're overwhelmed, it can actually mean you multitask more. So it's a sort of vicious cycle. You almost want to try and tackle everything at once. Being able to handle several tasks at once is part of the parcel of being a teacher, isn't it? Juggling all those balls, right? Spinning all those plates. But the human brain is actually not that equipped for concentrating on multiple tasks at once. So that's the perils of juggling and multitasking. So why don't we talk about that on next week's show? Not just multitasking in terms of technology, but multitasking in terms of everything we do, both in the classroom and outside. Because are you going to drop some balls? Is there such a thing as a positive multitask? What's the quote that I wrote down a couple of weeks ago that still fits, probably would fit next week's show? That's the one. Leonard Bernstein, composer and conductor. To achieve great things, 2 things are needed. This isn't pretentious. To achieve great things, 2 things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. So there's something in that balance, isn't there? You need pressure, but you also need stress. There's something in the value of stress that keeps it going as well. So why don't we talk about that? Juggling those balls, and is there such a thing as positive multitasking? Because if you find it hard to focus, then yes, that's true. But actually, there's something in positive multitasking, I think. The multitasking brain. We're not built for it, but actually doing enough of it is helpful for us. So why don't we talk about that on next week's show? It would be an absolute pleasure to have your company if you would like to join me. I hope it's cooler. I also hope that Wednesday goes well if you're watching the football, if you're watching England play their... It's the round of 32. That's right, isn't it? Because the World Cup, another round added to it. So round of 32 this Wednesday at 5 p.m. We're playing the DR Democratic Republic of Congo. So hopefully we'll get through. Hopefully I'll play a football tune on the little ad that I do for this week's show. So that'll be the plan. Next week, a celebration, but also talking about the stress of multitasking. It's been a pleasure having your company this Sunday, and I will see you next week at exactly the same time.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.
Outstanding, world-class vision, world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.